people I harmed.
Who I hurt.
Who I hurt.
Who I hurt, what I did, why I did it.
Bad order. We should be.
Good.
I got my stitches up.
I don't know. Yeah, don't clap like he did. Put them right back open. All right, John 5. Let's go ahead and open up with a word of prayer, and we'll get started. Father God, I love you, Lord. I thank you for who you are. God, I pray this morning, Lord, as we open your word, that you would teach us. God, may we learn from you. May we grow in you. God, there's just so much that your word, it's alive, it's active. There's constant things that we can learn through it. And God, I pray this morning you could just tear aside all the distractions, all the things that would pull us away from you. And Lord, may we focus 100% upon you and who you are this morning. And God, really begin to ask the questions, Lord, what within me needs to change? Lord, I love you, I worship you, and I praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So, John chapter 5. All right. So, anybody remember the whole purpose of why John wrote the Gospel of John? Let's say it for those in the back. They need to hear it too. To prove that Jesus is God. To prove that Jesus is God. Say it with authority, like you believe it. Not like to prove that Jesus is God. No, to prove that Jesus is God. Right? To prove that Jesus is God. All right? So there's several different things that happen throughout the Gospel of John to prove that, right? There's different signs that happen that Jesus does. Jesus performs. Jesus does. That he performs in order to prove that he's God. Anybody remember what the first sign that Jesus did was? So the water to wine. How did this prove that he was God? What did you say? Yeah, he's God over nature. And God over time. Because in order for you to go from nothingness to wine, there has to be a planting, there has to be a watering, there has to be a growth and a pruning and a plucking and a pressing and a crushing and a fermenting, and like, it's a long process. Yet Jesus did it like that. Right? Remember, he had those people go and the servants go and fill the water jars. They filled it to the brim. They knew that they put water inside the jars. And then he tells them, hey, I need you to scoop it out and go and serve it. Like, there wasn't like there was lots of time in this for like a process. Like, they literally just did it. And then they went and they gave it to them. And the guy had mentioned that this was, you saved the best wine to last. Nobody does that. Everybody gives the best wine first. So that way everybody gets drunk and they don't know what's happening after that. Many of you experience that whenever you go to bars, right? You may get the strong drinks up front, but then after that, you getting just straight up just juice or whatever. You ain't getting the real thing, like, right? But Jesus, and whenever he did the water into wine, he saved the best for last, right? And it says there at the end of that whole passage that this was the first of the signs that Jesus did. Anybody remember what the second one was? Yeah, the healing of the nobleman's son. So in chapter 4. Right? So how did this prove that he was God?
Distance.
Yeah. You can say over space or distance. Right? Because if you remember, the guy comes up to Jesus and he says, hey, my son is like on his deathbed. Like, I need you to come and heal my son. And Jesus just tells him to go and that his son will be healed. And he goes. The man, he ends up beseeching Jesus. I mean, he begs him to come, and Jesus ends up telling him to go, and he goes, and as he went, his son was healed. And if you remember, like, it was like the next day, while he was on his way home, so it was like a long way home, that his servant, this nobleman's servant, comes out to meet him, and he says, hey, your son is well. And he says, when did this happen? And he said, yesterday at this time. And he said he knew that it was the same time that Jesus just spoke the word that his son was healed. Right? So we're going to jump into the third sign today. It's a good one. Chapter 5, verse 1. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. We don't know what Jewish festival this was. People speculate which Jewish festival it was. We don't know for sure. It was time for one of the Jewish festivals. Now, in Jerusalem, near the sheep gate, a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by five covered colonnades. Here, a great number of disabled people used to lie: the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed. Right? So there was this pool. Visualize it here with these five pillars that were covered, that people that were essentially sick went. And history, about, I think it was 60, 70 years ago, sometime in the early 1900s, maybe it was late 1800s, they actually uncovered this area. Archaeologists actually found it because of what was mentioned in here with the specifics of the five covered colonnades, right? So they found the pool, and it's actually down some stairs, so it's not like it's up on level with everything else. It actually got completely covered up during the destruction of Jerusalem. But archaeologists have actually found this pool of Bethesda. Again, just to validate what's within Scripture. If Jesus tarries another 1,000 years, they're going to have so much stuff that has just, they continue. It's like almost daily and weekly they're uncovering things that align perfectly with what was written within Scripture to validate what has been said, right? So it was this place that people that were disabled, they would come, okay? So I want you that as we continue to talk about these people that are here, I want you to place yourself there for a minute. Because each of us, if we're honest, have been at this place that these people have. Now, I'm not talking about that you necessarily were paralyzed, even though some people here at Chrome were paralyzed. I'm not talking about the fact that you may be blind, because even though some people here may be blind, or that you got some disease that may be incurable, right? But like, we all have this sickness within us called sin. And apart from being healed from that sickness, we're going to die. We're going to die. These people that would sit by this pool, they were desperate. They were desperate. And I'm going to read something here that will show you just how desperate they were. Verse 5. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years, essentially meaning he was paralyzed. He was paralyzed for 38 years. Imagine, 38 years. Some of you have been bound in addiction for 38 years. Some of you ain't even 38 years old, but been living as an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well? Do you want to get well?" And I want you to hear this guy's response. "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool whenever the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." What they believed, whether it actually happened or it was just a legend that it would happen, they believed that an angel would come down and would stir the waters, and the first person that would get into the water was healed. Everybody else, you're out of luck. Sorry. But the first one that got into the water was healed. And so, I mean, think about it. If you knew that I'm broken You sitting there and you're waiting for your moment and hoping that your moment would come. But this guy, one after the next, after the next, after the next, he had nobody to help him get into the water. He was, in a sense, without hope. Without hope. You ever been in a place in your life where you were without hope? You're without hope and you just felt hopeless?
That's his phone ringing.
Oh, hold on. We got a phone ringing. I was like, what in the world? Not interested. Thank you. I hung up on whoever called. Sorry. I was super distracted. I was like, what in the world is going on? No, I didn't think it was a phone, actually. I didn't know what it was. It sounded like my toothbrush, to be honest. You know, like if your toothbrush, like you turn it on and you let it sit there and it just kind of vibrates across the counter or in the bag whenever you go on vacation. That's what it reminded me of. So, squirrel. It's raining back in. All right. So this man's there. They believed that whenever somebody would come, or when their angel would come that stir the waters, first one got in the water was healed. He was desperate because he was staying there time after time after time after time, just hoping that time would come and he would be the first one to get in and get healed. I don't know if you've ever been at that place where you were hopeless and you were desperate. And many times whenever we're desperate, we're willing to do anything. Kind of. Kind of. The reason why I say kind of is because I can't tell you how many people come here to Chrome, or maybe they come to another program, or maybe they show up at a church and they know that they have a sickness, so to speak. We'll just broad label sickness. And they don't know how to get well. But then they come, and whenever they come, they have conditions on getting well. I'll only get well as long as I can have this. I'll only get well as long as I can have this. I'll only get well as long as I can have this. I know some of the things that we do around here seem ridiculous to you probably. The fact that you can't have a phone. The fact that you can't talk to any women that you're not blood related or married to. Right? Like some of that stuff is probably crazy to you. And for many people, they're so broken and messed up in their addiction, that's a reason why they won't come. And many times we end up having these conditions on getting well. In order to truly get to the place of where we're going to get well and completely healed, we got to come with no conditions. No conditions. We all need to come to Jesus with no conditions. Like not, I'll follow you as long as. I'll follow you if you do this. You got to come with no conditions. Even if my wife never comes back, even if I never see my kids again, even if I never get my house, my car, my job back, any of those things, even if, Jesus, I'll still follow you. Whenever I was in my brokenness and in my addiction, whenever I had lost everything, wife, kids, car, house, job, everything, in that moment, I came to this place where I realized that whether I ever saw my wife or my kids again, I needed to be the man that God had called me to be. First and foremost. Because whenever I become the man that God called me to be, then everything that happens after that, it's all up to Him. Right? I'm not worried about being restored to my wife. I'm not worried about being restored to my kids. I'm not worried about the job or any of that stuff. I'm just trusting Him and I'm following Him. And you know what's crazy? Matthew 6 talks about this perfectly. All of Matthew 6 talks about not worrying. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about what you're going to eat. Don't worry about what you're going to wear. Don't worry about what you're going to live. I mean, all that stuff. Don't worry. It says for the pagans, run after all these things. Those that don't follow after Jesus, they run after all those things. And it says your Father in heaven, He knows what you need. He says, if you seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, then all those things will be added unto you. So coming to know Christ and who he is, truly, giving your life to him, following after him, laying down your life for him, that should be your priority, seeking him first. And then all that other stuff, it's an added unto you. Your wife coming back, your kids coming back, your job, all that stuff is an added unto you. You seek that first, you're not going to get all this. That becomes your idol. That becomes the thing that you're worshiping, and it's not God. What do you love most? What do you love most? Because whatever you love most, you'll give everything else up for. And for many of us, we did just that. We loved other women more than we loved our spouse. We loved other women more than we did our kids. We loved drugs more than we did our spouse or our kids. We loved alcohol more than we did our spouse or our kids. We loved money more than we did our spouse or our kids. And you're like, no, I didn't. Yeah, you did. That's why whenever your kids would come around and they'd be pulling, I'm talking about me here, pulling on my shirt sleeve saying, Daddy, Daddy, can we come and do this? And I would literally say, not right now.
Amen.
And days and weeks and months would go past and I still never went back to do what it was that they were seeking to do. I was just concerned on doing whatever I wanted to do whenever I wanted to do it. It's what I love most. Notice I said loved most. Past tense. Past tense. The greatest measure of what we love most is what we'll give everything else up for. You know what's crazy? Jesus says, if you want to be my disciple, you must hate father, brother, mother, sister, etc., in order to be my disciple. And I talked about the other day how the word hate actually means to love less. You must love them less than you love Jesus. He says, if you're going to be my disciple, you must be mocked in my name. Or you will be mocked. You must be willing to be mocked in my name. He said, in order to be my disciple, you'll be incarcerated. Be willing to be incarcerated in my name. Be willing to be persecuted and even murdered, even to the point of death in my name. You know what's crazy? Every condition that Jesus gave us to be his disciple, we met in chasing after sex, drugs, and alcohol. We were willing to be mocked, called a whore, called a druggie, called a junkie, called an alcoholic, called a whatever. We were mocked. Many of us incarcerated for it. And you know what? It didn't change us. We still kept going back. We were willing to die for it. And some people say, bro, you don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't willing to die for it. You ever drove drunk? Did your meth say use only as directed on the back of it? Did you buy your heroin at CVS? No, you were willing to die for it. Every time that you used it, you were taking a risk. Acts, we know full well what it means to worship. Our whole lives had done it. We were just worshiping the wrong thing. We were just worshiping the wrong thing. And here this guy is. He's broken. I mean, an invalid, somebody that's paralyzed, can't get into the pool himself. And I want you to notice what happens, though, because it's not just him that's at this pool. It can't be. It's got to be loaded with people everywhere just waiting to get in. Because they know that if they get in the water first, they're healed. So there's a bunch of desperate people all around. But you know what? Jesus walks past all of them and goes to this guy. The same way that, in a sense, Jesus walked past all them other people within your life to get to you. Because he was seeking a relationship with you. He was drawing you. Their time may come later, but right now it's all about you. In this moment, in this time, it's all about you. He's coming to you. This is the second time, I say second time, that I can think of off the top of my head, where Jesus had like this divine appointment, so to speak. Remember the woman at the well? Jesus went to the middle of Samaria, middle of the day, whenever there shouldn't have been anybody at the well, to meet this one woman because he knew she was going to be there. He had a divine appointment with her in her brokenness. And then you get to this guy. Jesus comes past all these people. I mean, there was a festival, it said. That's how this chapter started off. There was a festival. Anytime there was a festival in Jerusalem, guess what? Everybody's mommy and daddy and grandpappy and grandma were all there, showed up. Festivals were big things in Jewish culture. They're all there. And Jesus went past all of them to meet this one guy. You know what's wild? Jesus is in the presence of all these people. And Scripture don't mention any of them coming up to him. Their eyes, at this moment, were so focused on the water, and the water being their way of healing, they didn't realize that the healer was in their midst. And how many times in our own messes, we get so caught up in what it is that we're doing. We think that we know the way to get well. We may come to a place like this, and we may hear things that may prick and challenge our hearts, but we don't realize that the healer's in our midst the whole time. The one that can make you whole, the one that can set you free, the one that could truly give you peace in your heart. He's here the whole time. So many times our lives are learned in reverse. I don't know if you can reflect and honestly look back on your life, but many lessons that we learn are learned in reverse. And many guys will not learn the lessons they learn here until they leave. And whenever they're out there and all of a sudden life starts hitting them slap in the face again, then all of a sudden it's like, I remember. I remember. And then the love of Jesus begins to overwhelm you. And his grace and mercy begin to pour on you. And so many times we just learn it in reverse. The most important thing with this guy right here is who's asking him the question. Do you want to get well? And Jesus is asking the same question to you today. Do you want to get well? But so many of us, whenever it's so simple, we make it super complicated. Do you want to get well? A simple yes would have sufficed. Yes, I want to get well. But instead, what does he do? Gives a bunch of excuses for why he can't get well. Do you want to get well? Well, my mom. Do you want to get well? Well, generational curses. Do you want to get well? Well, my whole family are alcoholics. That's not what he asked. Do you want to get well? Do you want to get free from this life of addiction and these chains and this bondage you're in? Or do you want to continue to stay in it? Well, I'm only here just to do my time, and once my time's over, I'm gone. You're lost, not mine. I can't tell you how many times I've heard over there in the jail different people making these statements, and usually it's the older guys. They'll tell the young bucks, don't be like me. Get it together now. I hope that you can get it together now because you don't want to be in here for the next 40, 50 years like I've been. Yet, how many times, like it's just, I talked to this guy, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. He was like 19, 20 years old. He was getting in some trouble, and I said, I wish that I could go back to 19, 20 years old and do everything over again. Like if the Lord could get a hold of you now at 19, 20 years old, by the time you're 28, whenever I gave my life to the Lord, like you would already be 10 years ahead of me. Like just give up, bro. And then 5 years later, he's still drinking and driving and going 100 and something miles down the road and completely rolls his vehicle and he walks away. And it's like, you ready now? You know? Then that was maybe 7, 8 months ago. His brother had the same type of accident about a month ago. And it's like, and he's like, and he told this guy that I've been talking to since he was like 19, he said, I'm like hyper aware of just how precious life is. And I was like, you think? Like, been trying to tell you that, bro. Like, do people in your family have to get hurt and die before all of a sudden you wake up? Do you have to lose loved ones before all of a sudden you wake up? Do you have to lose your friends? Do they have to die and be in the grave and just before you wake up? Like, at what point do you just say, I give up? I surrender. Jesus, have your way. Jesus asked him, do you want to get well? And he says, sir, I have no one to help me get into the pool whenever the waters are stirred. He begins to make these excuses. He wanted healing on his terms. This guy had no help. He had no hope. Then Jesus said to him, notice, Jesus, he doesn't mess around with our excuses. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. I thought of other words. I couldn't think of that word. Excuses. Jesus doesn't even address his excuses. Jesus simply tells him, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. This dude's an invalid. 38 years, paralyzed, can't move on his own. Do you want to get well? I ain't got nobody to help me whenever the waters are stirred. Get up, take your mat, and walk. Now he's left with a choice. Am I going to take this dude at his word, or am I going to continue to lay here and just come up with excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse for why I can't get well? Get up, take up your mat, walk. That seems super simple. That seems too simple. And you know what? I think many of us do that with Jesus and what he did for us on the cross. It can't be that simple. Yeah. It can't be that simple. What do you mean I just have to believe? What do you mean I have to trust him? Like, that's too simple. Like, surely I have to do something more. That's our pride kicking in. I got to do this and I got to do this and I got to do this in order to get right within God's sight. No, you don't. You have to believe. You have to trust in him. Trust in what he did on the cross. Trust in his finished work. And this man's faith is being put to the test right off the rip. Am I going to trust this man at his word, or am I going to stay here? And that's the same choice that you're left with today. Am I going to take Jesus at his word and trust him and believe that he is who he says he is? Or am I just going to continue to lay in my mess, bellyache and complain about everybody else and all these problems that I have and how the world just don't suit me and how everybody's against me and or am I going to get up, take up my mat and walk? I mean, the choice is yours. You could stay there and wallow in your pity and self-deprecation and pride and arrogance and say, I ain't going nowhere. You know what? This man, 38 years, that's a long time. His identity is in who he is. I'm an invalid. And you know what? Many of us, our identities are in who we've been. I'm just always going to be a junkie. I'm just always going to be an alcoholic. I'm just always going to be a whore. I'm always going to be a deadbeat dad. I'm just always going to be a deadbeat husband. I'm always going to do this. It becomes our identity. Or we can choose to get up, take up our mat, and walk.
Wow. Amen.
The choice is yours. The choice is yours. Because you know what? That guy could have laid there. Look at what it says next, though. Get up, take up your mat, and walk. At once, the man was cured. At once, he was cured. The dude is made whole. He's made well while sitting there, laying there on the mat. And you know what? He could have laid there healed and not even realize he'd been healed. Not only was it his identity, it was also his livelihood. I mean, think about it. You lay, you're an invalid. Everybody knows you're an invalid. What do? Hey, alms for the poor, and they're going to help him out. Now, all of a sudden, if he gets up, he takes up his mat and walk, I got to go figure out how to work. And for many of you, once you come to know the Lord and you begin to walk it out, oh man, now I got to figure out how to work a job for real. Now I got to figure out how to actually get on payroll. I ain't never earned money apart from selling dope. I ain't never earned money apart from stealing this and selling it to somebody else. Like, I got to actually get a job. My whole identity's changed. I got to figure out how to do life now. At once, this man was healed. And he could have stayed there and wallowed in his self-pity and never realized the healing power of what Jesus had done within his life. Get up, pick up your mat, walk. At once, the man was cured. And he picked up his mat and he walked. What did he do? He trusted in Jesus. He believed in him. He believed in him. He believed. How do I know that he believed? He stood up. He picked up his mat and he walked. He didn't stay there. He began to put his feet into action. If you love me, obey my commandments. If we love Jesus, we'll begin to put our feet to action. We'll take up our mat and we'll begin to walk. We'll begin to walk. Look what continues to happen though. It says the day on which this took place was a Sabbath. Oh, now you know everything's about to get spicy. Because Jesus goes against everything that the Pharisees think is right and righteous, and he just confuses them to death. It was the Sabbath. And so the Jewish leaders said to that man who had been healed, it is the Sabbath, and the law forbids you to carry your mat. Do you see what had happened? This dude had just been healed. He had been an invalid for 38 years, and I promise you, the people of that city knew who he was. That dude's broke. But they're looking at him. He's walking around and it ain't like, holy cow, he's healed. He's walking. They miss the miracle because they get caught up in the religiosity of it. They completely miss the miracle. And they're more concerned with the fact that it's the Sabbath and why you carrying your bed on the Sabbath. This is them taking everything just to the extreme. You know, in 1992, there was this story in this Orthodox Jewish community. Orthodox Jews that like literally hold to a lot of the stuff of the Old Testament, and they're just like, they're super devout. But they're so devout that in 1992, there was this fire that broke out. And guess what? It was the Sabbath. And the people, instead of calling for help for somebody to put out the fire, they got a hold of the rabbi They went to where the rabbi was to ask him if it's okay for them to call for the fire department to come and put the fire out. Because they didn't want to call on the Sabbath and break the Sabbath by making a phone call to try to get somebody help. And whenever they had done that, by the time that the rabbi had actually answered them and said, yes, you can make the call, 2 other apartments ended up burning down. Because they get so wrapped up and taking things to the extreme. Don't you remember Jesus, he even makes the statement like, what one of you, if you had an ox fall in the ditch on the Sabbath, wouldn't you go and you get it out? Like you're able to do good on the Sabbath, is what Jesus tells them. But a lot of this was stuff that the Pharisees started putting up over top of people. They started heaping up these burdens on top of people because they didn't want to go back. Go back to what? Go back to captivity. Remember whenever they had come out of Egypt, they were in Egypt for a long time, 400 years. They were in Egypt and they were in slavery and in bondage. God delivered them. They wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. God tells them, if you obey me and follow me, if you do not worship any other gods, like, hey, you guys will be established here within the promised land, like all this blessings. Like he gives them all this stuff within Deuteronomy that he'll do if they end up obeying and following him. And then he says, if you don't, this will happen. And one of them was coming into captivity. And that's what ended up happening. Northern and southern kingdom of Israel both go into captivity. They're in bondage. And at the end of that time, the end of the period, whenever they're out of bondage, they come back. And this is whenever the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes, they all rise to power. I say power. They all come to the surface and they become these super religious people that begin to try to hold everybody to the letter of the law. Why? Because they don't want to go back into slavery again. They're trying to do it just out of the genuineness and just devoutness to God, but they end up heaping up this stuff upon people by trying to hold people to the letter of the law of what the law doesn't say. And they end up saying stuff like they can't have anything unclean within their body. And so they would literally, Jesus addresses this, he said, you strain the gnat while swallowing the camel. Like if they had soup, for instance, they would literally strain the soup to make sure that there was nothing like a gnat that was within their soup before they put it into their body, because they didn't want anything unclean going into their body. And he said, you're straining the gnat while swallowing the camel. The gnat being the smallest unclean thing, and the camel being one of the largest. He's just saying, like, you're missing the point, is what Jesus is telling them. You keep trying to hold everybody to the letter of the law, and you're missing the point. I had seen something the other day, and I thought it was interesting, and I'll just share this with you. The law, or the Torah, there's a root word within there, and I don't remember what the root word actually is, but the root word within the Hebrew, it means to shoot or to point. Like that's the meaning of the word, like the law or the Torah, is to shoot or to point. Then you get to the New Testament and you see this word sin, amartia, which means missing the mark. The law is the shoot or to point, and the sin is the missing the mark. How we're falling short. I just thought that was kind of neat. How the words, it's the same type of thing. To shoot, the law, we're to shooting or to pointing at to what it is that God wants us to do. And the sin is whenever we're falling short or missing the mark. It's an archery term. So this man, he trusted Jesus by doing what? He picked up his mat and he walked. So it says that the Jewish leaders, verse 10, said to the man who had been healed, it's the Sabbath, the law forbids you to carry your mat. But he replied, the man who made me well said, pick up your mat and walk. So he points back to, they're telling him, hey, you shouldn't be picking up your mat and walking. And he's saying, hey, the dude that made me well, he told me to pick up my mat and walk. Like, he healed me. Like, you may not want me to carry my mat today, but I'm carrying my mat today because I'm made whole. Yeah. And so they asked him, who is this fellow who told you to pick up your mat and walk? And it says that the man had no idea who it was. He had no idea it was Jesus. He just knew he had been made well. He had no idea who it was that had changed his life. He had no idea who had completely just revolutionized him. He just knew that he had been made well. And it says, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Later, Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, see, you are well again. Stop sinning or something worse may happen to you. Well, guess what? Now he knows it's Jesus. And he tells him, he says, stop sinning or something worse may happen to you. Jesus healed him physically. But whenever Jesus sees him again, and he sees him again, he readdresses something and he says, stop sinning or something worse may happen to you. Now he's concerned with his spiritual. He's concerned with his eternity. You need to stop sinning. Something worse that would happen to you, because whenever we sin, if we sin, we are destined for hell, an eternity apart from Christ in hell. And he's now addressing the spiritual aspect of this man, trying to reach him at his heart and saying, hey, you're healed physically, but you need to be healed spiritually. For many people that come here, and I've seen it time and time again, they actually get healed physically. We had one of the very first people that came to Chrome. He was born with this congenital heart defect. He ended up playing college basketball. He was looking at going into the NBA. And then all of a sudden, he had all kinds of heart issues one of his last years in college. And all these heart issues he ended up having open heart surgery multiple times. And they ended up telling him he could never play ball again. That he just needed to be confined to a desk. And I mean, they had him on opiates and all these different things, which ended up bringing him to Chrome. And he came here. He was here for a little bit over a year. And throughout that time, he didn't go to the doctor at all. And he said, I'm just going to trust the Lord to heal me. About a little bit after a year of him being here, he ended up having a doctor's appointment up at Emory in Atlanta. And he went to that hospital up there. He was up there for multiple days, and they ran all kinds of tests on him. And his doctor said, I don't know what I'm looking at. He said, other than a miracle. He said, your heart is like it's brand new. He said, you can't even tell that any work was ever done to you. And he said, if you want to go back and play basketball again, you can play basketball again. He was physically healed. God can do the work physically. I've seen it countless times here. But are you going to allow him to do the work spiritually? Are you going to allow him to do the work spiritually? Whenever, after Hurricane Michael, I had a tree fall on me and I broke my leg. And I ended up having 2 surgeries on my ankle about a year and a half apart. I had pain every step that I took for about 2 years, like excruciating pain. And I had this lady at church that she told me, she said, Chris, she said, I had the same type of thing happen. She said, I ended up breaking my ankle. And she said that she had a pastor of her church come up to her and told her that, hey, every time that you step and there's pain, you need to thank God for healing your ankle. And begin to thank him for the work that he's doing and for healing your ankle. And just tell the enemy that if he wants to continue to bring this up and continue to remind you of this pain, that, hey, I'm just going to take it to the Lord every time. And she said, Chris, after a few months, she said the pain completely went away. I thought she was a little bit crazy, but you know what? I had a lot of pain. And I was like, I'll try anything. I was desperate. And I literally began to pray every single step that I would take, and there would be pain. I was like, God, thank you for healing my ankle. God, I believe that you're doing the work and that you're healing my ankle. And the pain would keep coming, and it would keep coming, and it kept coming, and kept coming. And a couple months later, all of a sudden, it just went away. And I haven't had pain since. And that's been, 5, 6 years ago. Now, my right leg compared to my left leg, my ankle is like that big. And my other one's like that big. I mean, it's always swollen. But there's no pain. There's no pain. Like, the Lord did the work. Am I going to trust him and believe him? Or am I going to just wallow in it and just say this is always just going to be here?
He took me when I first got here, I went to I had to submit to him, and I just got to go through withdrawals on that. When I got on the other side of it, he took it off on me. I thought, Lord, all that, took it off on me.
I've seen countless people that have come in here with all different types of medications. And God has completely set them free. Set them free. Y'all want to see how many medications Brett was taking? He's got pictures of him. He had 2 different Ziploc bags full of medications that he completely walked away from all of them, and the Lord completely set him free. You know, like countless people I've seen it. But so many people, it's just like, I'm never going to get well. I'll always be this way. And in doing that, you're not trusting him. You're not believing him. Jesus told him, he said, see, you're well again. Stop sinning or something worse may happen to you. The man went away, told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who had made him well. So because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders began to persecute him. In his defense, Jesus said to them, my Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working. And for this reason, they tried all the more to kill him. That's what it says. They tried to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal to God. They tried to kill him. This is one of many times that they try to kill Jesus. There's a time later on where they try to kill Jesus, and after Jesus does another miracle. And Jesus asks them, he says, for which of these miracles are you trying to kill me for? And they said, for no good work, no miracle are we trying to kill you, but you, a mere man, are claiming to be God. So they were wanting to kill him for blasphemy. There was other times where Jesus said, before Abraham was born, I am. He used God's name, Yahweh. And it says, at this, they picked up stones to stone him. Why? Blasphemy. Because him being a man claiming to be God. This guy, the invalid, is the third sign. Because Jesus can take what's broken and make it whole. This stuff right here is not just like who he used to be or what he did. All this stuff applies to us and what he can do within our life. You know, whenever there's a storm going on within our life, whether physically or spiritually, Jesus is God over top of the storm. Like I remember very clearly whenever Hurricane Michael was coming through Mariana. 155 mile an hour sustained winds here in Mariana. We're an hour inland. And I remember standing at my window and just watching. I felt like I was watching the Weather Channel in perfect vision. I would say like HD, 4K, whatever. Like it was right out my window. And I'd go from the front window to the back window just to see the differences every so often. And I have on my phone, I began to video whenever it was getting really bad during the first, because the eye went right over top of our house. So the first half of it. I was videoing because I watched as like there was these 3 trees. I mean, there was a bunch that were already down, but there was these 3 trees that were like coming towards our house. They were just doing this over and over again. And so I started videoing because I was like, there was one of them that I thought for sure was going to go. And then all of a sudden, the one right next to it went and it landed literally right next to our house. My wife literally shouts out, "My God is greater." Like immediately. Immediately. I mean, it makes me emotional every time that I think about it, and even whenever I go back and I hear it again. Because her first response was, "My God is greater." After the storm had passed and we had gone out there, there was like 4 or 5 trees that literally laid right on top of each other. The branches touched the edge of our house, like the roof of our house, but like didn't do no damage to the house. And so many times I went, and as I drove through the town after this, I mean, we had to have the chainsaw army clear away first. After I drove through the town, there were so many houses where you literally saw this circle of trees around their houses, or circle of trees around the trailers. Countless times. And it was just God's provision and his protection. It could have gone any other way. But God's like, not on this one. Not on this one. He's in control. He's over all. The space and the distance. There's times within our lives whenever we feel like God is far away. Right now, there's supposedly, y'all can debate it if you want, that there's people on this Artemis mission flying around the moon or whatever coming back right now. Y'all can debate that later if you want. But I told my wife the other day, I couldn't imagine being outside of the Earth's atmosphere in the middle of nothingness for days. And all you see is just darkness. I mean, you see planets, but it's just darkness and nothingness. And it would just seem like everybody is so far away. And I know that there's times within our lives where we feel like God is so far away. We're going through something. We're in the middle of the fire, and it's like, God, are you here? God, are you here? I can't tell you how many different people I've told them whenever they begin to share with me one of their deepest, darkest moments within their life. Many of them were within our childhood. I tell them, I say, you need to get alone with the Lord and pray and have him take you back to that moment and ask him, God, where were you in that moment? And he'll show you. He'll show you where he was in that moment. You felt like he was forever away, but he was there. And whenever we speak, whenever we pray, whenever we ask things for him, there's no distance that we have to worry about, because all he has to do is just speak the word. All he has to do is speak the word. This guy, this invalid, he gives me hope. Because I was busted up from the floor up. I was broken. I was completely desolate. I lost everything. I was without hope. And Jesus restored me, he healed me, and he made me whole. The same thing he did to this guy. He took what was broken, what man looked at and said was impossible. God said, hold on, watch this. And he made him whole. He can make you whole too. No matter how broken you are, no matter how hopeless you are, no matter how much you think I've gone too far, God can never use me. You're never too far gone. As long as you draw breath, you still have hope. As long as you still draw breath. The question is, are you going to continue to try to just be like this guy was in the beginning and just lay there and be like, it's hopeless. I've been this way my whole life. I've been this way for 20 years. I've been this way for 30 years. I've been this way for 40 years. I will always be an alcoholic. I will always be a drug addict. I will always be a sex addict. I will always be a whatever, fill in the blank. You know what? Apart from Jesus coming and crossing your path, you know what? You may be. You may be that the rest of your life. But Jesus comes to each of us individually and moves in each of our hearts individually, compels each of us individually to change and be different, to be like him. And he can take what is completely broken and make it whole. I don't know how many of you have been so broken that you feel like it's hopeless. But he can take you and he can make you whole. To go back to what the prophet said in the Old Testament, God takes the clay, that broken pot, and he reforms it into something else more beautiful than what it was before. Are you going to allow him to do the work? Or are you going to fight him while he's doing the work? I think that you need to put a handle here. I think you missed a spot right here. Don't take that spot. That's going to stay with me. You can't have that, God. Just let God do his work. Because his desire is for you to be whole and to be holy as he is holy. I feel such an overwhelming within me today that there's somebody here that today feels broken, that relates with this man. And I feel like Jesus is stepping into your Bethesda today and saying, do you want to get well? And I think for some of you, you're going to have to make this physical step to say, I want to get well. I don't care what it costs. I have no conditions. I yield, God, to whatever it is you want it to look like. I want to get well. Are you desperate today? Because as long as you think, I got this thing whooped, I'm good, you don't need Jesus. It's not the healthy who need a doctor, it's the sick. And he came for those that know that apart from him coming and completely making them whole, there ain't no hope. Will you yield today to what it is that he wants to do within your life? Quit making excuses and just give up. It's the most freeing thing I ever did. Just surrender. God, whatever you want to do within my life, whatever you want it to look like, I yield. And he can do so much with your life whenever you do it. Love you guys. Have a good day.